County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting. Could we have a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Here.
Commissioner David?
Here.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Here.
Commissioner Carvana?
Here.
President Brennan?
Here. Thank you.
I'm going to hand the meeting back to you.
Okay, thank you. Did you announce the date? I can do that.
Try it again. I don't remember if I said
So
it.
welcome to the San Mateo County Harbor Commission meeting. It's the May 20th meeting, and we are in South San Francisco this evening. I'm going to start with public comment, and so far we have items 2. Okay. I don't have any speaker slips for public comment, so I'm going to move to staff recognition.
I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the staff and commissioners who, during my first 6 days here, have helped me become acclimated and worked hard to help get my systems working as well as we could, and teach me as much as they know about the district. There's a lot of experience and expertise out there, and it's going to be great working cooperatively with everyone for a better district.
Okay, thank you. Scott, did you want to make any staff recognition?
I have none.
Okay. So next we have the consent calendar, and we have one item, minutes of April 4th, 2015 meeting.
So moved.
Okay, can we get a second? Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Abstain. I wasn't there.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Abstain, I also wasn't at the meeting. Okay. Should we have pulled it off consent to abstain? We don't have to do that, do we?
Nope.
Okay, good. So next we're going to item E, new business, and we're at agenda item 2, which is special use permit for the 2015-2016 Titans of Mavericks Invitational Surf Event. And we have a report from the interim general manager.
For the record, I'd like to state that my name is Tom Mateusz. I own a charter boat in the harbor there, the Hoolie Cat, and I take passengers fishing, whale watching, and I engage in other sightseeing activities. I'm recusing myself from discussion on this item, item 2, as there could exist a strong financial benefit for me, and it would not be right for me to continue to participate in this discussion.
Thank you.
Now you can go. Sorry. Okay. In the staff report, which is, the staff report itself is brief. We included a lot of material. Probably going back through history, there could have been a lot more included. But what I believe we've done here is suggested some of the conditions that will need to be met on a permit if it's approved. The staff recommendation, and as far as I know, this is simply an administrative act to approve a permit that's been applied for. And the staff recommendation is to approve the permit.
Okay, so we're going to go to public comment on item 2, and I'm going to start with John Ullum.
Thanks for having me up here tonight. Probably 2 areas I want to cover is what you should do about issuing the permit. The second is what the conditions of that permit should be. From what I've read, you've got no choice. The way that the permit was handled was so sloppy, so out of control, that all that will happen if you deny them the permit is you will cost the district money through lawsuits and harassment. There's no way around it. You can read in the agreements, emails, the subside deals. You can watch it in video when they made the deal. It's just horribly sloppy. He knows it. And, you're best off to give them the permit, but you should keep three things in mind. That the permit itself, that the Mavericks, which then was sold to Cartel, was not paid for until January 14th. So that's 2 weeks after the window had opened. Wasn't signed by Mavericks personnel, or Cartel personnel, I should say, until January 14th, and was not signed by district personnel until the third week of January. But worse than that, the certificate of insurance, which is required, which is like intuitive why you would, wasn't provided until January 28th. The certificate shows that the insurance was purchased on January 27th. So now you see that the event for the whole month of January, the first 4 weeks, couldn't happen. If it had happened, the district would have been at a serious risk. Staff signed the permit. This is something you should pay attention to. Staff signed that permit without having the certificate of insurance. That insurance came a week later. Last on the permit thing, I don't get it, but for some reason the permit fee appears to have been refunded to Cartel and Mavericks on February 27th. Now they listed as a credit on the debit credit balance sheet that was provided, but I don't know if they got a refund or if they got credit to account or what happened with the money, but I'm trying to understand why that was happening on February 27th when there was a month left to go. Let me just real quick. Should the district require, as a part of the permit, that access be denied to the beach? It's pretty clear that that is the district's request, that the district imposed that condition, and that condition keeps people from going down to the beach and using the bluffs. This intuitively seems wrong. Ms. David, I know you have a problem with closing down accesses to the beach. I know you do, Ms. Brennan. And both of you are willing to advocate that a man who actually owns the path can't close access to it. But for $11,600, which doesn't even break even for the district when you're having his time, just cleaning up the mess that's been made, and what do we get out of it? Nothing. And they close access to a really, really beautiful beach and bluffs. It's a horrible precedent. I don't understand how it's allowed by the Coastal Commission. I can't find any permit where the Coastal Commission signed off on that. Hopefully that issue will be addressed because I'm interested in that. Thanks for letting me go over time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mark Hurd.
Yeah, good evening. To the Commission, Mr. Bernardo, Ms. Davis, Ms. Brennan, Mr. Carvano, and the abstaining Mateusz, I appreciate the time. I don't want to belabor any points because I think that our position has been appropriately addressed in our May 15 letter. I had intended to add to that the fact that we did on the day after, in an abundance of caution, provide an additional updated application to go along with the application fee that has previously been provided. I think that there are a number of issues here that, at least from our position, the permit had been approved in June 2013. The monies have been paid, the applications submitted, and everything is done prior to the July 1st deadlines that have been imposed throughout since June of 2013. So we've met all of the requirements on behalf of the Titans and Mavericks team, which includes both Cartel Management and Mavericks Invitational Inc., the original applicant for the permit. Contrary to the misinformation, Cartel didn't buy Mavericks. We have an agreement between us to work cooperatively. The Mavericks Invitational folks are experts at the local process here. They've been applying for these permits. They've been putting on the event for years. Cartel Management comes in with its main principal, Griffin Guest, who has an expertise in basically branding, publicizing the event, being able to really make this a first-class quality event that all of us believe that it is. And being able to share that specialness of the Mavericks event with those outside the community. We spent a great deal of time and money garnering sponsors for the event. We have an ongoing sponsor that will provide live feeds for the event via the internet. There's an entire tally of additional sponsors lining up, literally lining up to sponsor this event and provide the kind of exposure that everybody believes that this event requires and needs. And the only sticking point is this mishigas that has occurred over the last few weeks or months with an application by the World Surf League calling into question the validity of the permit process. Now we understand that as of yesterday or today, the WSL has even withdrawn its application. So from that standpoint, you're left with a valid permit, as we've described in our letter of May 14th, we believe to be a valid, legally binding permit. We've done everything that the district has asked, and now the district is left with nobody else to take its void. And I think that from that standpoint, if there's any additional comment or questions that the board has of us, I'm more than happy, in conjunction with Cassandra Clark of Mavericks Invitational, to address those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I appreciate that that you have only one speaker tonight versus such a large group, but I do want to give the public another chance to speak with one more speaker after the board has a discussion, because the board may have some questions, or there may be some follow-up or clarifying statements that need to be made. So if someone wants to speak one more time, I'm just putting that out there. Do we have any discussion?
I have, if I can ask our legal counsel for a favor, since we are referring back to an action or motion that was made on the June 5th, 2013 meeting. Do you have that in front of you, the motion? Could you possibly read that to us?
Let's see if...
I have it. I could read it if you need it.
I do not have it in front of me.
Is that?
It's actually part of item 2. So either one. Okay.
Yes, here, I'm sorry, I found it. Do you want... So what was your question?
To just, for the benefit of the public that hasn't been at the meeting or reviewed the minutes or the video of that meeting, to just repeat the motion that was made, the action that was taken that day.
And that was June 5th, 2013, correct?
Yes, I was not present at that meeting, but I'm happy to read from the minutes if that's what you're asking me to do.
Yes.
Says, action, motion by Brennan, second by Bernardo, to allow the application fee of $5,000 due July 1 of each year, and approve the special use permit for Mavericks International, Inc. for use of specified district facilities and services for an annual Mavericks Big Wave Surf Contest event during 2013-2014 at or in the vicinity of Pillar Point Harbor, and for up to 2 additional years, parentheses 2014-2015 and 2015-2016, conditioned upon the right of the Harbor District to review and modify its approval of the additional years as may be deemed appropriate by the district. Then there's a further modification that former General Manager Grinnell stated that there was a typo in his memo and corrected the name of the event production company from Roadie Company to Mountain Sports International. Savory, my predecessor, stated that the motion didn't clarify when the permit fee would be due. Tucker stated on or before November 1. The motion passed by roll call vote, ayes 4, nays 0, abstention 1. Commissioner Holson.
Thank you.
Is that, do you have anything else?
Yeah, but Want me to go ahead?
Well, unless someone else wants to chime in.
So I just want to state that despite some different interpretations of the language of that action, I am supporting the intent of the motion, which is in my mind clearly including the 2015-16 surf season. And some community members have expressed some concerns to me about the, for lack of a better word, strategy of cartel management. So what I would like to suggest is that I can summarize those maybe in 2 bullet points in an email and send that to our general manager. Maybe other commissioners could do the same if they received similar comments. And then the general manager could possibly sit down with the permittee and talk about those concerns. So we might not be able to address all of them, but we can start with communicating those concerns that have been raised.
For the sake of transparency, do you want to mention any of those?
No, I didn't bring them with me.
Okay.
I would have to summarize them to make it a little easier to go through.
That's why it was so much better. There's a I don't know.
Anybody else? What do you think? Okay. Well, then I guess it's my turn. So I have a lot of questions. I think our staff knows that by now. And Stephen Miller has helped me quite a lot in clarifying some of the questions, and I still have some lingering questions that are really more for staff. I don't imagine or expect that I'm going to get answers to all these questions tonight, but I wanted to put them out there in the public domain so that people were aware of like some points of clarification that I feel like I need. And thoughts about how to move forward. And well, let me back up and just say that I am going to be in support of moving forward with the event. I really enjoy the event and I'm excited about it. Really hoping it's going to happen this season, just like everybody here is. So looking forward to that. And I also want to make sure that our district is moving forward in the most professional manner possible and that we're doing business in an accountable and transparent way. And I think there's some room for improvement. And I don't, so I guess what I'm going to do is throw out some questions and some thoughts about this. There has been a lot of discussion about some of the confusing elements of past permits, and some of those were actually outlined, some of the issues were outlined very clearly in the letter that we received from the cartel management attorney, Mr. Hurd. So I'll just begin. And I'm going to start with, in 2013, the district issued a special use permit and not a commercial activity permit. And Stephen, jump in if I get anything wrong according to your information. So that was in 2013. The required fees were $5,000 application fee and $11,600 permit fee. And they were made in accordance with the district's event policy. So those fees are specified clearly in our event policy. The permit did not include language regarding how the fees would be utilized. I understand that the district by practice refunded permit fees. This appears inconsistent with the event policy or the concept of a commercial use permit where the purpose is not just to cover costs, but to actually generate revenue. So I have some concerns about that. I guess when we voted on this back in 2013, I don't ever recall hearing that we were going to have staff refund or not refund, sorry, rollover fees, that was never a topic of discussion. So when I found out we were rolling over fees recently, within the last few weeks, I was surprised to learn that, because it wasn't something that was specified in the event policy that I've noticed, or the fee schedule, and it also wasn't something that we discussed at a board meeting. So in January 2014, with the limited commercial activity permit, I guess the question is, why did the district issue a second permit for the 2013-14 year? This permit did this permit contain additional terms regarding how the $11,600 fee would be utilized? It doesn't appear that it does, so I guess that's just a question. And it also included something about a 5% of gross revenue fee, and I wasn't able to pick that up in any of the other permits. So does that, Stephen Miller, does that sound accurate to you?
I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay. Well, the way I read it was there was an extra fee included, which was a 5% of gross revenue of sales. And that's something that our district does with, not usually with permits, but with leases. So it was sort of an odd thing. I hadn't realized that that was ever in there. And it seems like it would be really hard if we were going to do percentages. It would be hard to validate that or enforce it. So it would seem to be kind of an enforcement issue. Like, how would we want to enforce collecting a fee like that? It just, I don't know. I'm just confused by that. Then I've got a special use permit was issued to Cartel Management and Mavericks Invitational for the 2014-15 year. It was approved by the board on consent on December 3rd, 2014, without the board seeing the actual permit. And then my question here is, I actually missed that consent item. So I'm pretty positive I didn't vote on that consent item because I happened to come in late at that meeting. But I just have a concern about voting to approve a permit that I haven't seen. And I haven't been presented with a permit tonight. There is no permit for me to approve a written permit. So I'm confused about how I can approve a permit that I actually don't have a physical copy of. I don't have a copy of a permit with dates for the current season, and whatever the new terms are going to be that, if the district decides to make any changes, and I don't know what types of permit language changes might come up. I would like to see the permit and read it before I vote on it. I mean, to me, I just don't understand doing business without actually reading the permit. How can I approve something if I haven't actually read it? So that's a concern I have, and that, I've seen that happen before here, and I just don't think it's a very good business practice to approve things that we haven't read yet. So that's, definitely a red flag for me, and I wish that we had a permit here in our board packet that we could read, and then we could vote on it. And that would have been really helpful, but I understand that with the timing of this, that maybe that couldn't happen. So I also have some confusion about the 2014-15 permit. First, some of the dates are unclear, perhaps just typos in some cases. For instance, section 4.10.2 states that the renewal must be considered not less than 90 days before January 1, 2015, but the permit was signed on January 22, 2015. There are things like that just seem inconsistent, and it concerns me. The permit does not describe how the fees are to be used. It is my understanding that Mavericks paid both the application fee and the permit fee for the 2014-15 year. However, because the event was canceled, staff agreed to hold the permit fees to apply to the next year's permit. And this rolling over can create some concerns for me. One is, if the purpose of the fee is to generate revenue, why was it applied to the next year? And then the next one is, if the purpose of the fee was to reimburse for district costs, was a portion of the permit fee applied to the district's costs? And what are those costs? You know, it would be helpful if we had an outline of costs associated with the event for the district. I mean, this would all be useful information. Then I have the event policy fee schedule and event application. They don't specify that the $5,000 application fee is refundable. So it seems to me that it should be clearly specified in the fee schedule whether or not the $5,000 application fee is refundable. And my opinion is that the $5,000 application fee probably should be at least partially refundable, especially if one doesn't get awarded the permit. So that seems like something that needs further clarification, and I think that there's some work that needs to be done to clear up some of this confusion in our event policy and in our event fee schedule. And that also reminds me that our event policy, I think, was finished in 2012. I know that was something that Commissioner Bernardo was involved with. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
About
2012.
Yeah. And it hasn't been reviewed since then. And I think that every couple of years, like the other fees that the district charges for various other things, we as a district should be looking at the event policy fee schedule and considering whether or not we need to make any changes to it, just like we do with all of our other, fees that the district charges for various marine-related things. So I think this one we kind of forgot to look at, and it would be good to take a look at it, especially to fix some of the typos and clarify language and just make it really clear for anybody that's reading it. So at this point, it's my recommendation that a 2015-16 permit drafted by council should come back to the board for review and approval at the June 17th regular board meeting. I would feel more comfortable with that. I may not get support for that, but I'm just letting everybody know kind of what I'm thinking right now about this. I'm concerned that in the future, that multi-year exclusivity may not benefit the district and the public. And so I want to understand better if we, not now, but if we ever going forward were to consider to do multi-year exclusivity, what the public benefit for that would be. So that's something down the road that I'm going to think about that more later. But I wanted to put that out there, and I'm sure the public has lots of opinions on that I'd be open to hearing. So it's my understanding that that Cartel Management is the 4th Mavericks contest organizer in the past 6 years, and the 5th since the first contest was planned in 1998, 1999. Now that might not be accurate. I got that out of a newspaper. So somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I read. And what that points to me is that there has been a lot of flux with the contest. I think we kind of all know that. And that is one of the reasons why the multi-year thing concerns me. I have gotten several calls from people concerned, and I've gotten these kinds of comments for years, but there have been concerns raised about whether or not the Harbor District has checked with other permitting agencies. Have we checked with the Coastal Commission staff to make sure that that a permit is not needed to block or close beach access? I don't know if we have or not. But I do know from living very close to the site of the event that it's not safe for the public to be on the beach the day of the event. That much I know. But I still want to make sure that as a district, we're checking with the permitting agencies to make sure we're in compliance, because our district has had some problems with that in the past. I don't think this is necessarily going to be an issue, but I think we need to check if we haven't already, maybe staff has. So currently, it's my understanding that the Harbor Patrol closes the West Shoreline Trail for the Mavericks event. I know there's a lot of law enforcement in that area. I see John shaking his head, so maybe it's law enforcement that closes it? Okay, that must be the way it is, because now he's agreeing. So, we get high surf advisory days or surf warning days fairly frequently, and that trail's usually never closed, but it is closed for the event, and it's closed to protect public safety, particularly based on the 2010 seawall breach, multiple breaches, and I believe that the event has been a lot safer since that area was closed to the public. So I understand that, but I still have some questions about access, making sure that we're in compliance with any other agencies that have jurisdiction over that area. So moving on here, what can be done to ensure the district or let me put it this way, what can be done to ensure that the board is asked to consider if the staff is, all right, let me put it this way. It seems to me that the board should be considering whether or not fees are rolled over, and that hasn't happened in the past. It hasn't come back to the board for consideration. So I think it would be helpful if in the new permit that needs to be drafted, that it contain language that clarifies what's going on with the fees, because that is just a big mystery to me, and I think we need to be really clear about what we're doing with the fees. And also, we need to be clear if, we should have our policies updated so that it's not just in the permit, but it's clear in the event policy what's going to happen with the fees, or as clear as we can be. And then to ensure that the fees are properly collected, and, I don't know, what kind of account do they go in? Are they held in an escrow account? I don't know what happens with them, so I have some questions about that. The date of the contest window clearly specified, I would hope that it would be clearly specified in the 15-16 permit and not be subject to change without approval by the board. And I know last time that the window was changed, it did come back to the board, and I think that that's a good thing. So I wanted to mention that, but it seems like that's something that could also be included in the permit itself. And then the insurance certificate should be updated to include the full contest window and attached to the permit. That's another thing, like, I'd like to see the permit, and I'd like to see the insurance certificate as well. So those are things that I would like to read. Concerns have been raised regarding a plan to block access. I don't know if there's anything, if these assertions are correct or not. I know this was covered in some degree in the letter that we received from Mr. Hurd. But there have been concerns raised to me by boat owners about possibly not being able to access the event with charter boats. And we do have business interests at Pillar Point Harbor. Clearly, the surf contest is a big day for our charter boats. And so I would just hope that the permit would make clear that the charter boats would still have access to run their businesses and take people out to view the event. So, I would like to make sure that's not going to be a problem. And then also with media access, there have been a lot of rumors, which, may be inaccurate, I don't know, regarding a blocking of media access for the event, and in fact, it's been called a media blackout. And, you know, I would hope that that was not the case. I also hope that the live stream continues to be free, because the live stream has been great in the past, and I know everybody really loves it. But I do hope that our local media is able to get out and access the event. So just wanted to throw that out there. Can the district increase the 1516 permit fee to cover the cost of legal fees required to develop the 1516 permit, or any other hard costs for the district? And I don't know what all those costs would be, but I would just want to make sure that we weren't losing money on this permit. So that's a question for staff. And then the business about the 5% of gross revenue, I'm still confused about that and what that was all about. Let's see, I'm almost done, believe it or not. So, with regard to, it's been suggested by several people that going forward, the district might want to consider an RFP process as a different way to deal with this event. And that's something that I think, you know, down the road, the staff might want to explore that idea. I think that it could have some benefits for the district, and I think it would definitely be worth considering. It looks like we have one more speaker slip. I think I've got just a couple more things here. Well, how about I'll just let the speaker and then I'll finish. Oh, we have two. Okay, so I'm going to call Brian Rogers first, and then I will call Mr. Hurd.
Yeah, I'm just speaking to a fellow citizen, trying to understand what's going on here. But basically, I mean, I've been to the Mavericks thing before they closed the beach. I think it's much safer with the beach closer, or with the beach closed. That was pretty crazy what I saw out there on the beach. The other thing is, why are we wasting this much time on this? This is ridiculous. You got this thing approved 2 years ago for a 4-year plan, and now we've wasted, what, 40 minutes discussing something that was already pre-approved. Let's get back to business. Let's stop wasting our time on this. Let's move on. I don't care about the rumors. I don't. I want business to get done. And, you know, they've got a permit. It's the done deal. You guys said you were going to give it to them. You know, if an event doesn't happen, why wouldn't you refund their money? The fact that they let you keep it for a whole year, good for you. You got to make the interest. But yeah, let's move on and get stuff done.
Thank you. Thank you. So next we have John Olam.
So we get 6 minutes?
Take as much time as you want.
Please take your 6 minutes.
It's not your job to make their business model work. You guys sit there and say that you need to close the beach because their activity presents a danger to the public. You ever thought about it the other way? That if their activity presents a danger to the public, maybe the activity shouldn't be allowed. Or maybe they should manage it differently. Or maybe they should take on responsibility for managing the event. Let's give them that. The rumors about, rumors, which are not rumors, about the media access. If you read the letter the lawyer sent, he states, rather, Cartel and Titans team simply established an application process whereby Cartel and Titans request the media members to register with organizers. Well, I tried. And if you've read the email that they sent me, you can see they admitted that I repetitively tried to contact them, discuss as a media member. The only way I was able to get through them is an email to you, one of their lawyers. Then they got through to them. And then they got back to me and said they have the right to allow or deny my access to filming the event. Okay. That's apparently what they need to have, to make money on their event. They need to control access to the imagery. But that's not what they told you. They told you all they were interested in is making sure that people like me knew the rules. Now, the way that I tried contacting them was twofold. One, they have a Titans of Mavericks website where they have a media form contact at the bottom of it. That was open for months. What happened is you type in your text and it would disappear. You never knew exactly what you were typing in. It was difficult to know if you submitted anything or not, and no one ever responded anyways when I figured out to hack around it. So I think you should consider whether they're telling you the truth. For example, they used on their website, cartelmanagement.com, for months and months until it was either yesterday or the day before, listed for media to contact Karen Sundell of Rowan and Cohen Rowan, a very reputable agency that knows what they're doing when it comes to promoting stuff like this. I contacted her personally. She told me multiple times that she would only all they'd ever done for Mavericks was issue a press release, and that they were not handling media inquiries. And I tried again just the other day and spoke with her, and she was surprised to find out her name was still listed. So how are people supposed to contact and follow these media procedures that they claim exist? These are the kind of things you want to think about when you're evaluating whether you trust these guys to give you a 5-year extension. Because they're not telling you the whole story. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mark Hurd.
The district, when trying to address these, you've identified at least 13 or 14 questions. I'll try to address them in as quickly as 3 minutes as possible, or if possible. But I think that the main issue is that the first question I think that can be addressed directly is that at the time that these permits were approved prospectively, there was in fact discussion on the record as to whether or not the application fee would be refundable versus the event fee being, the permit fee being refundable. Because the district was approving a 3-year plan, okay, pre-approving, if you will, a 3-year plan, it was expressly discussed on the record that the application fees would then be non-refundable because you had already approved those applications for a 3-year period. It was then the event fee, the permit fee itself, that we understood to be something that would roll over, because if the event did not go forward, we didn't use the beach, we didn't use the harbor, we didn't use the district property, then we shouldn't have to pay the $11,600. But because the board had already pre-approved the 3-year period, then the application fees on a yearly basis would be paid, would be non-refundable. That was a bargain that we struck, and that was clear on the record.
Was that in writing? I've never seen that, so I've just wondered where that came from.
It was in the video, the 17 and a half minutes worth of video that were taken from the June 5th, 2013 hearing. There was some discussion about that being non-refundable. I believe it was President Tucker who made that comment with regard to the application fees being non-refundable for those 3 years.
Okay.
But that if and then if the event went forward, then you would have the actual permit fees, which you're paying the $5,000 to reserve your space, and $11,600 is for actually parking your RV into that parking spot.
I'll rewatch the video. Thank you.
That's the way I understood everything from the video itself. I would love to be able to address the concerns that you raised, President Brennan, about concerns raised by concerned individuals that you then stated that you did not want to address publicly at this point. I would love to be able to address them. I would love to, and I'm sure Cassandra or Jeff Clark would love to be able to address those concerns. We just don't know what those are. So if at some point you can see to it to raise those concerns that have apparently been voiced to you. We would love to address those. I just wanted to at least put it out there.
You mean-
We'd like to have that opportunity.
Just so I understand you, you mean the concerns I raised about the media blackout that's been suggested? Or-
If items 12A and 12B are the ones that you were referring to very early on in your questions that I have listed as number 4, then sure, if those are the concerns that you have, then great, that's a clarification, which means that I can address that issue. The media access, I don't know what Mr. Ulam's talking about, quite frankly. I have, from everything that I've been told by our Titans of Mavericks folks, is that the website is perfectly functional. There have been a series of emails, none of which had asked for media access requests, or we couldn't make sense of them, okay? It was not until Mr. Ulam sent a letter, an email to my partner, who had not been involved in this case at all, okay? Saying, and my partner sent me an email, what's this? I don't know who this guy is. So that's when Wayne forwarded that to Cartel, they provided a response. And the issue is very simple as this, okay? Whether it's the Navy, the Coast Guard, NOAA, any of the agencies concerned with preservation and conservation of the surf line and whatever, they have restricted zones. They dictate to us where people can and cannot be, okay? They then, in their permits, tell us, you are responsible for making sure that anybody who shows up at this event complies with our rules. If you don't, you have to notify us. The Coast Guard comes in and says, if you find that somebody is violating our rules, you let us know, because we will have them removed. Because you have that responsibility. That is what we're talking about. We're not denying access to any areas. We are simply trying to meet our obligations to enforce the permits that have been provided to us by a myriad of other agencies. When they're telling us that we can't do something that would possibly harm harbor seals, and they tell us we have to stay away from that portion of Pillar Harbor, then we have to tell charter boat captains, hey guys, don't park your boats over there for your charters during this event. If they tell us that we cannot, because of safety concerns, have people in a restricted area, we have to tell the media, guys, you can't go there. Or if you do, for the protection of this district, you have to sign a liability waiver, be covered under our insurance, do whatever we can in order to protect the district. If you want to get into the danger zone, like the surfers, if they need to get into that area, they sign a waiver saying, listen, we understand this is dangerous, and we're not going to hold the district liable. Same thing goes for the media members. You want to get into a restricted area, you have to sign a media release that says, I know what I'm getting my backside into here. I'm not going to sue because I went into a danger area knowingly. That's the kind of protection that we're trying to provide for this district. And the issue of insurance, whether or not the insurance certificates showed up at the district office at a time when the event had not yet been scheduled because of the fact that we didn't have any waves, doesn't factor in the fact that this insurance had already been applied for and approved simply because we got the certificate in at the time that the permit was actually issued, which, as I understand it, part of the delay, and I apologize to Mr. Grandy here, part of the delay was that in the very beginning of January of 2015, late December, somewhere around about that time, there was a vacation time or you were out of town or something like that. So I think that was part of the issue with the delay, okay? I could be wrong on that, but that was my understanding. So these things were in place, but because the event had finally been staged for January 1 to March 31st, we provided the insurance certificate. As long as it's in place before anybody hops into the water, then there's insurance coverage, and that is the point behind all of these efforts. And the same thing goes for the boat access. I think I mentioned that. You talked about your concerns about media access or boat access or whatever. There's a difference between what we say It would say, we reserve the right to deny the media access if you intend to violate the Coast Guard's airspace. I think we have a right to do that. If the Coast Guard tells us, don't go into these areas, and you come in and say, well, I want to fly over this area. Well, the Coast Guard says no, then we have a right to deny that media access if you are saying that you are going to willfully violate those rules. We don't know because we haven't received Mr. Hoolin's applications.
So I think that we all understand that there's a lot of overlapping jurisdiction with multi-agencies in this particular area, and that it's that it's complex and that there are all kinds of requirements put upon you. So I do understand that. But I do think it's helpful for the public to hear this and better understand sort of what you're dealing with in trying to get this contest to happen. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I also think, you know, some of the issues with the charter boat thing came up. There was a newspaper article that talked about a barge that was going to block charter boat access, and you know, that's a newspaper article. I don't know if it was based on anything truthful, but it caused people with charter boats to worry that they weren't going to have access because there was going to be a large barge positioned in their way. And then with the media, you know, I have received calls from the Mercury News and the Half Moon Bay Review and so forth with concerns about whether or not they were going to be able to access the event. And usually I believe they probably do it on a charter boat. So I'm asking these questions and I'm voicing these concerns because they are coming to me, and I think this is a great opportunity to clear this stuff up. So that's, you know, I think it's important, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
And I understand that. And Griffin Guest and Cartel Management, their expertise is in branding and, you know, media, okay? And the idea that somebody who is, you know, charged with the responsibility of providing media access and providing media exposure to this event would limit media access is completely nonsensical. It really is. And I don't know where these comments come from or how they're generated other than from some sort of animosity or jealousy or whatever. I don't know what that is. But it makes no sense for somebody who is coming in to provide greater media exposure to this event to somehow say, oh, sorry, newspaper, you can't come in here. We don't want to have media access. It's nonsensical. And I think to provide that kind of comments to have those comments hold any water, I think shows a little bit of a lack of understanding of what's going on here.
Well, the purpose of this discussion is so that we're able to understand where the two companies that are, you know, applying for the permit are coming from. And so it's healthy to have the discussion. It's healthy, you know, rumors happen when people don't talk to each other. So this is an opportunity, and you're making full use of it here to, you know, set the record straight. And so I appreciate that, and I think the feedback is useful.
Well, and I think one final point with regard to the idea of having to have the permit before it's approved, it seems to me that that's sort of the classic chicken and egg argument. We have to make the application, the board has to discuss the terms under which the permit can be issued, and then the permit gets issued based on the board discussion. So to say that you need to have a permit issued before, or at least a draft permit issued before you can have the discussion, seems somewhat backwards. In other words, the board provides the guidance and the conditions for the permit, which then get written up into the permit form. In other words, once the board has made its decision, Mr. Miller becomes a scrivener. He is the one that simply has to draft the document consistent with the board's, intent and purpose. And that's why I'm a little bit misunderstanding here as to why that becomes such an issue when, quite frankly, in years past, the 2 years previous to this, the permit was issued based upon what the board had approved in June of 2013. And it was reissued upon the application fee, payment of the application fee, and the payment of the permit fee. It was as simple as that. So Maybe I'm misunderstanding that, and I appreciate the board's concern and interest in opening a dialogue of communication. And if that was indeed the dialogue, then great. Perhaps I can have that dialogue with Mr. Miller. We can discuss those things. He can report to the board. I've opened a line of communication with Mr. Miller already. And perhaps we can foster that relationship further and keep this dialogue going. But we come back to the basic point here is that when it came down to it in June 2013, this board, this district approved a series of 3 one-year permits. And whether you now retroactively look at this from the position of saying, well, maybe we didn't do things as properly as we should have back in June of 2013, we complied with each and every obligation as required under that permit. And I think that the idea is that, yes, the board will reserve its right to review and modify the permit. It did not say anything according to the motion to deny that permit because it had already been approved in June of 2013.
Thank you.
I've addressed those questions, and I know that there are others that will be addressed.
Thank you. We've got two more speakers on this item, and I think this is a really important item, and this contest is very significant for the coast side, so I'm inclined to hear from these last 2 speakers if the board's okay with that. So we have Ken Collins.
Hello, I'm Ken Collins. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm an athlete. I'm one of the Mavericks athletes. I've been in every contest. And every year, there's always drama involved. And it's usually somebody complaining. But not one of them are complaining about what's best for the athletes. They're usually complaining about their own benefits and what they're not getting. A photographer not getting enough money. He's getting paid more than the athletes are getting their parents' fees. So for me, it's pretty saddening when I'm sitting here listening to people complain about them, and they're not invested like we are. I'm invested. My life is at risk when I serve these contests. I'm the one that should be getting taken care of. Our concerns should be asked and be addressed. It shouldn't be about some boat charter, because those guys can make boat waves and mess us up on our drops. They can be responsible for our falling off in a big way. I mean, a photographer, there's been hundreds of photographers out there. Why should one photographer rock the boat that I'm in? I'm invested. My life's invested. So to hear people so alarmed about what's happening about this guy or that guy, and they're not even in the contest, and they're not complaining about my sake, they're complaining about their own personal sake, that's pretty sad. Another sad part is finally we got our house in order. We got Jeff Clark, we got the athletes, we got C5, we got the community, we got Griffin, the cartel management, all on the same page. Our house is locked down tight. The main concern of the athletes, they're doing a lot of cool things for us. I've never been happier. And all of a sudden we're getting T-boned by another organization, WSL. I'm part of that too. I actually launched that. I was one of the first riders to do the Big Wave World Tour. We signed the papers with them. They didn't come through with what they promised us last year. They failed. They only ran 2 events out of 6. They could have ran Jaws, they didn't run it. The last event they had in Chile, they didn't even do a live broadcast. They're not holding their end of the bargain with the athletes on their own organization. And now they're coming over here to mess up with there's already a contest here. They don't need to be here. They're not doing what they're supposed to do in the other events. Now they want to mess with this. And this is really alarming because I don't see the purpose of it. And none of the WSL athletes are backing them on that. None of the Mavericks athletes are backing them that on. No one's asking us what we think. We have to sit there and we're forming an organization, we're forming a union, we're writing email letters, and I'm talking to Pete Mel, the Big Wave commissioner, is telling me that my opinion doesn't matter. And when they tell me that, I'm like, once again, I'm like, so the athletes don't matter, the boat charters matter, this guy's matter, that guy matters. All that matters is what the athletes feel and what if they're happy and if their house is strong. So I want you to consider that. Me and all the athletes are happy with what they're doing with Titans Mavericks right now. This house should not be messed with until they've had a fair chance to run their event and finish with this. The people that are complaining are the ones that are jealous. They want they want to get their hand in this and they can't. And that's the only reason they're complaining. And that's sad because it should be considered what the athletes think. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Cassandra Clark.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to say a few things, one of which is that this Harbor Commission is one of several agencies that approve our permit for this event. Several agencies. This is not the venue to discuss the merits of our event. It is a venue to discuss our use of Harbor District property during our event. One of many properties that we use during this event. So we have to remember that the Harbor District is not in the event business. The Harbor is in the business of running their district and their land. We are in the event business. We own this business. We own the event and the brand. This is not something that the Harbor Commission should put up for an RFP. You're not an event company. We own the event, just like the Olympics or the Super Bowl. We own the Super Bowl of surfing, and we are coming to the commission as one of many different agencies that I personally have worked with for the last 5 years. For Mr. Olam to state that we have had so many different people running this event, it's the same people over the last 5 years that we have been here consistently, meeting after meeting, explaining to you what we're doing for this event. We are committed to this community. We are also tenants in your Harbor District, right? So we have the home base of this event right there, our own store. We're there and always willing and available to answer questions from the public, from the Harbor Commissioners. I haven't seen anyone come in and ask us questions from the Harbor Commission. As far as a public venue to address these issues that come up from the public's concerns, we hold public meetings as part of our process. We meet at least a dozen times with the agencies, either as a group or individually, to master every single detail of this event on land, sea, and air. And so to think that there is no history as part of this event, or to think that there are people that maybe there's some turmoil within our group is a false understanding. To address one other issue, by the way, of the 5% in sales, 5%, that was addressed early on, and those are for events that take place on Harbor District property where sales take place on Harbor District property. It is clear that we do not sell items on Harbor District property. So therefore, other than through our shop, which has a separate arrangement with the Harbor District. So during the course of this event, during the festival, that festival and the sales there took place off-site, not on Harbor District property, and therefore, unless sales take place on Harbor District property, the Harbor District is not entitled to 5% of it.
That helps explain that. Thank you very much. And the last comment I have is from Doug Connor.
Hi. I run Half Moon Bay Kayak Company. I'm not financially connected to this at all. I just wanted to point something out at one point. My wife is a journalist, and she has never had any problem getting any information she needed from the contest. So I don't understand where the other comments come from. She complains a lot about getting information from different people, but I've never heard about these people.
Thank you. Okay, anything else for the board?
Can I, if I may?
Yeah.
Assuming that the commission is considering a motion, please, so that we have the opportunity to not have any unclarity that might cause a problem in the future. When you make your motion, if you have particular conditions, such as the ones that are in the packet, or others, clearly add those to the motion. The question was raised about it coming back to the board. The way this, and I mean district governance, works is you can make the motion, You put your conditions on the permit in the motion. Staff, and I think John Olam's comments on this point were right on. Staff, and I admonish all of you to help me do this, we want to make sure that every condition, and including anything else that will protect the district, is in place before that permit is executed, I assume by the chair.
I think under the event policy, it's the general manager.
So I'm telling you all,
I may
because
be
I'm
wrong
new,
about that.
do not let me execute this permit if it is not complete. I know that Mavericks is, and Titans of Mavericks and Cartel will also have an interest in making sure that it's complete, and that as a new GM, I don't sign something that's incomplete. But I really think it's important that your motion be clear. The only time that it should need to go back to the commission, which is possible, is if for some reason, we either need more clarity, some of the conditions for reasons beyond our control or their control cannot be met, and we need to come back to you to change what you've directed us to do. It's not that you can't demand that it be the board that approve it. It's just that I believe that's an unnecessary action. And I think we all know that we have a lot to do. So I don't think we need unnecessary actions. I don't know if Stephen has some additions.
No, I have no additions. I mean, your recommendation includes a number of conditions already, but I don't have anything to add.
So I move to approve the special use permit for 2015-2016 to Titans of Mavericks / Mavericks Invitational Surf Event with the condition that permittee will work with the Harbor District General Manager and Legal Counsel on permit details that are protective of the Harbor District.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and if anyone would like to comment. Okay, I would like to comment. I'm not prepared for this. I haven't had time to think about it, and I'm not prepared to move forward with it, so I'm going to abstain. I'm not in support of the motion. I just need more time to gather my thoughts on what should be included in the motion, and we just don't have time for that here tonight. So I would prefer to see the draft of the permit and proceed that way. I'm not comfortable with approving a permit that I haven't seen. It just doesn't feel right to me. So unfortunately, I'm in a tough spot there. So I'm going to abstain. And can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz? Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Abstain. Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to take a 5-minute break.
You want to gavel us back to work?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to call the meeting back to order.
You might pass whether
And we are on agenda item 3,
I'm just sitting around.
which is
Could go very quickly.
add the proceeds from the sale of the post office lot to the committed reserve for the district office. And we have a report included in our board packet from Deborah Galarza.
And I also, if I may, also just sort of as a point of order, I believe the next agenda items will go very fast, but if I am wrong, we may want to move more rapidly into the closed session in the interest of efficiency, and then reconvene and cover these items. As for this item here, my understanding was that, I think it was the Finance Committee, had asked the Finance Director to take the $794,000 and put it in the building reserve. Certainly the Commission can do that. Quick little, and I'll try not to bore you all, quick sort of lesson as someone who often wears a Finance Director hat, and I don't think Deborah would disagree with this. If you do nothing, which is my preferred option, the money will end up in the reserve anyway, and I will not be able to take it out of the reserve without your permission. we do need a reserve policy. That's going to be on my to-do list. But the only reason to put it in the building reserve is if right now you think you have great information about our financial plans, our reserves, and that what you want to tell the public is, we're pretty sure we want to spend this on the new building. However, if you have questions about other capital projects, if you have questions about our finances, you may want to just put it in the, my preference would be that it go into the unassigned reserve so that I can bring back to the commission some of what might be, and hear from you, what some of your other priorities might be besides the building reserve, so that you have the option to consider it then. Really, whatever you do, I still have to go to you to take it out of the reserve. You can also move it out of the building reserve later. So I really just use this opportunity to kind of give a little speech about reserves. But my preference would be that you take no action.
Are there any questions?
I have a comment. I just think that the district office, since we just moved, is not currently a priority in my mind, so I support that the funds remain in the unassigned reserves where they are currently, correct? And so they can be used for capital improvement projects more easily.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I'm getting a feeling, I had approached it from the point of view of Mr. Lazoff, that I just don't want to see it spent and frittered away at some point in time. There's been talk about building something on our property in the future, and I know that we have some committed funds there. If we had a way of locking these up so that they wouldn't be spent on something other than a building, whether it was committed or uncommitted, as long as it was earmarked and signed, I could go either way.
Any other comments? So I thought we were told previously, and correct me, that the money was just in the general fund. It wasn't in the reserve fund, in a reserve fund. Is that, did I misunderstand?
No, that's actually correct, but there's more to the answer, and I think someone was trying not to bore you with budget finance. But let me just explain. When you have unbudgeted funds or revenues that are not anticipated, they end up in the fund balance, which ends up in the reserve. So the only reason that they would be frittered away is that if during this year we overexpended our budget, which while I haven't got my hands into the meat of it, I had enough of a meeting to get assurance that we are not overspending our budget. Therefore, this will remain in fund balance, and unless the board acts, it will end up in the unassigned reserve, where it will sit until we have permission from the board to move it either for a capital, to be able to spend it on a capital expenditure, or we decide, hey, this building is the highest and best use, let's put it in the committed building reserve. So it is the same thing to say, yes, it's in the general fund, but since it's unbudgeted and unspent, it will go into fund balance, and being in fund balance, it will be an unassigned reserve. I don't know if you have...
So I would feel more comfortable if it was in an assigned reserve. I'm not necessarily that concerned about it being specifically earmarked for one particular project, because I think that the board might want some flexibility depending on what projects need to get done first, and that's something that we were going to get to on another agenda item at this meeting. But I think that, we have a history of exceeding our budget. And so it sounds like, and maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but it sounds like we could fritter it away pretty quickly if we went over budget. Is that?
Yes, but you know what, even if you put it in the reserve and you fritter it away, we're still going to be looking at the reserve to hit the money. So the answer is not to fritter it away and not to overspend if it's not already too late in the year to do that. Do you follow? Maybe you can explain better than I can.
Okay. Chair, just a point of clarification. When I left the district, there was about $9 million in reserves. Right now, there's $15 million. So I don't know where the frittering away
I use the word
coming from. I'm just saying, but I think there's a feeling on the board that the reserves going from 9 million to 15 million somehow is a bad thing. So I just want to clarify that the district is doing better. And so just as a point of reference. So the other thing about the reserves, one of the topics that may be coming up is refinancing the DBA debt. And to the extent that you have to prepay DBA before you can go get another loan, by taking this and assigning it somewhere, it gives us less capability to do that. Now, that's not to say at the time that we need to refinance something, we can come back to the board and say, will you release these out of some of the committed reserves and put them back so we can better fund the district's finances. So that is an option for the board. So I just want to make those 2 points.
Okay. Well, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve or support the recommendation from staff and adopt Resolution 1615 to increase the reserves.
The preferred choice of staff was to take no action.
Or take no action. I'm sorry. That's right.
Okay, so we don't need a motion then for that, for taking no action. Does anybody want to make a motion? Okay, all right, we're taking no action then. So we're moving on to agenda item 4, which is possible action and discussion, the top 5 priorities. And this is an item for the interim general manager.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you to table this item. The reason being that I put this on here when I was a new interim GM and full of flush. But now that I have some experience, it doesn't seem practical to rush ahead with this. I think you get the gist of the idea that I want to set priorities. I think we should consider this again at our next regular meeting in June 19th. But I think that operationally, we have enough on our plate right now that to rush into this and to not give you all time to think about it, maybe you have some other higher priorities, isn't well served, since I know we're not going to start any of these before June 19th.
Okay, so we do have a couple public comments. I'm going to call Brian Rogers.
Yeah, I don't mind if you table it, I just wanted to get my 2 cents in before you did. Basically, on this one, 1 through 3 I think are great. I think number 1 is going to be required, so I don't know why that's on the list of priorities. I mean, whether you want it to be there or not, you're going to have to respond. I'm looking forward to the answer to number 2, because I went to budget meetings, and yeah, now I'm hearing there's no shortfall, so I'm dying to know how that worked out. And number 3, I'm super supportive of that getting done. I think that's taken a long time, and you know, we haven't done anything in an awful long time. Number 4, she sort of made a little more sense, because I don't understand why you refinance a loan that's almost done. I mean, you're 3 years away from paying it off. You've got the money. If you really wanted to, just be done with it. Not that I think that's a good use of your money, but I don't really, other than unless you're going after new resources, why would you refinance that? And then the only other comment I'd have is, please don't go into closed session until you're done with all the rest of the stuff. None of us want to sit here that long. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, next we have John Ullum.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lathoff. Thanks for giving me a little shout out there. I don't think they like it. So appreciate the fact that you were listening. I don't know if everybody else was. Just a little background for you and the other 2 commissioners. Less than a year ago, the gentleman who had your job was asked to explain what possibilities there were and why we were using reserve funds to cover deficits. His response was, what reserves? What deficits? And you've seen how things are. You know that that's a pretty silly response for them to give back in the day. Back then, for the last few years, many years, Ms. Galarza, she was here with the confirming, because she's the one who told everybody this district's been running about 20 to 30% budget deficit. You have been spending money out of your reserves to finance operations. I mean, it was so bad at this district last year that when Ms. Galarza pointed that out, Mr. Tucker and Mr. Holstinger, who are gone, thankfully, we had a huge discussion about what the meaning of depreciation is. As if they didn't understand the implication of what spending 20 to 30% more than you take in each year means. Now, I've come to actually like the Harbor District employees. I don't know if they like me, but I have. But they don't understand something. This district is being considered to be dissolved. They're looking to shut it down. And when that happens, you're all going to have to get new jobs. So whether you like the way it's being run by the harbor commissioners, or if you don't like the manager, or you don't like anybody else, you do need to understand this is an enterprise district. It has been losing money for years. You are spending your reserves. They used to call them restricted reserves. We pointed that out. The next meeting they became unrestricted reserves. Think about that. For years they were called restricted reserves. That's how they showed up. As soon as we point out you're spending your restricted reserves, all of a sudden it changed. That's the kind of board that was being worked with for the last couple of decades. And it took a lot of work on the part of a lot of people to expose this, to get it out there, and we eventually got a board that's willing to address this issue, which is why a gentleman like you is here today.
Thank you.
So you need to understand that this was a seriously effed up situation for the last decade or so. And there was nobody talking about it. They were putzing around, talking about protocol, about procedure, about how to be nice to each other. That's why the district is in the mess that you find it in today. So I hope you all take that into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so I just have one comment. On 4, it says that, it says refinance DBW loan, but I think we were told by Ms. Galarza previously that refinancing is not an option, that we would have to take out a new loan, and that we can't refinance the DBW loan. So just wanted to clarify that. Is that accurate?
Through the chair, a refinance simply implies that you will seek better interest rates or better terms elsewhere.
From a new loan.
Who you end up going through. So if you had a mortgage loan for B of A may be the new mortgage loan that you get it through if they then had better terms. So DBOG could be a better term. The problem is they're very restricted on what you can do with capital expenditures and your leases. And so from a term basis, we probably would not seek them as a source of a refinancing lender. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps clarify that.
Yes.
Definitely.
So yes, you could go back to that well. I don't know that you would want to.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a question for clarification. I heard from our general manager the request to table this item.
Yes.
I would like to respect that, and we're like halfway discussing it now. Are we not tabling it, or?
It's your meeting, commissioners.
You would like to table it?
Do we need a motion to table it, or?
So you would need, if the concept of tabling, which as those of you who love Robert's rules as I do know, is actually a motion to lay on the table, would involve a vote to move this to another meeting, and then it will appear on another meeting's calendar.
And you can
as opposed to what you just did, which is just take no action, and it just vanishes as if nothing ever happened.
You can either specify a meeting or a time frame, or you could not specify it with the understanding that I'm the one that put it here, it's important to me, you will see it again.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to move this item to a future agenda.
I second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay. Next, we have item 5, which is agenda procedure, and this is also an item for the interim general manager review and potential revisions to current procedures for placing items on the meeting agenda.
And you also got a public comment.
Oh, yeah, we do have a public comment for 5.
My introduction to this item will be brief, and that is that my philosophy is that these meetings are your meetings, that The commission needs to run these meetings. You elect the chair who presides over these meetings. You can table items, you can move them along. But when you have a situation where, and I've been in agencies that handle this many different ways, but when you have a situation where, and I just came from a city, by the way, where the only way a member of the city council could get an item on the agenda if staff objected was to have a majority. So this is not an unusual way to do things. I'm not so sure that that's a model, and it worked out so well for them, because what happens is it's frustrating for those who can't get items on. My own feeling is that if you would let staff make the decision, it's really not my role to tell a commissioner that they can't have a discussion. I think it's the commission's role, like if you want to empower the chair to do that, but I don't think it's my role. And I'm not comfortable, if you leave the decision to me to put an item on or not, I might try to persuade someone to put it off, but I'm going to put it on because I don't want to avoid the opportunity for people to discuss. Now, as you can see, I don't hesitate writing, I haven't finished down the staff report, please table. I think it's perfectly appropriate for a commissioner to say, we don't want to talk about this item, and pull it from the agenda. I believe they can do that, correct? Pull an item from the agenda? Or am I?
After the item has been posted on the agenda.
Can they say?
Once under the district, I mean, you can set, it's your, as he says, it's your meetings, but you have a adopted resolution that says once an agenda has been printed, an item may not be removed without a majority of vote of the board.
So you could have a majority vote to remove an item, and this would do staff the favor of having questions about what's on or off your agenda be ultimately presided by the commission, which is the way it should be, because, in my view, because I am not your peer. I work for any 3, 4, or 5 of you. So that's the question I'm raising. Honestly, if you want to think about it for a while, this is, you've been doing business the other way long enough. I don't need to shake that up, but I did want an opportunity to express my thoughts. And, as a staff member, say it would make my life easier if this was something that the commission empowered itself to do. If we do it with the chair, I'd have a conversation with the chair. I'd say, hey, I've got these items. The chair who represents you would say, I want to add this item. I don't want to do this item. I might try to make a case to a reasonable chair about why an item should come up. It could be your rule that staff can put it on with or without the chair's permission, or the chair can put it on with or without staff. But the idea that staff is the final authority until the meeting, unless 3 of you vote, I just think it puts staff in a tough spot.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a comment. I think it's very important that any commissioner, may they be in the minority or majority, should be able to place an item on the agenda. And I can also see how that can easily overload staff and schedule. So I think I would suggest that we let commissioners decide which items they want to bring forward, and we maybe limit it to 1 item per commissioner per meeting, so the commissioners themselves have to prioritize the topics that are of public concern.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would like to state that, just for the purpose of background for Mr. Lazoff, that we do have a policy in terms of how agenda items are placed on a future agenda. And there's a very strong track record for having done that. And even though we have adopted this resolution 1913, the rules for preparation of agenda have not been complied with. There has been violations of this resolution. So before we move to adopt or edit the resolution 1913, I think that this commission should be in compliance with the resolution that it itself had passed on what was the date? August the 7th, 2013. So that's why I feel like this still has to get teased out if, in terms of just showing that, we're still not complying. We have a resolution that's in place and we're not following it. So in order to come up with something, it sounds like it's a little bit more flexible. I would not want to go in that direction. I think we need to even strengthen and comply and enforce what we have on the books. That's what and this was in resolution, what is it, 1913 can be found in item 5, additional information, which is in the meeting packet.
Any additional comments? I have a few. So I like the idea that Commissioner David proposed. We do have a really long list of items that commissioners have previously requested that we have not yet gotten to. And, as things come up, additional items keep getting added. So we do have a backlog. I do think that it's important that every commissioner have an opportunity to get things that are important to them on the agenda. So I do strongly support that. I think that when the voters elect board members, they want those board members to all be able to get items onto the agenda. So I think that it's important that each and every one of us can get our items heard. I am a little concerned about this board packet because there were some requests for agenda items that got added, such as item 6, item 7, and item 8. And on each of those items that were commissioner requests, well, first of all, they're out of order, meaning it's not like we're going from the backlog to take things that were put on a long time ago and work through the backlog, which I think there needs to be some way to keep track of these items so that it seems like some things never actually make it onto the agenda. So there needs to be a list with a date so that you know when the item was requested, and then items should move up according to the list and the date unless there's some priority and those items need to take a priority position above other things because they're time sensitive. So I think that there are things that have been added to the list that have gotten lost. So that's my point. And if we're only simply, or if the staff is simply going to put, staff reports that say we didn't have time to prepare a report or we didn't check with the commissioner to see what they had in mind for the report, it's sort of a waste of paper and not really worthwhile having it in the board packet. So I don't really support those types of items. If we're going to put it in the board packet and it's going to be part of the meeting and agendized, then I think we need to be ready to talk about it, and there needs to be supplemental information that is useful for the discussion. And if the commissioner needed to supply that and they didn't get it together to provide it to staff, or staff didn't have time to get to it, well, that's fine. Then don't put it in the board packet because there's nothing to put in, and instead we have sort of a placeholder paper, and I really don't see the purpose of that. So I'm not pleased with that sort of a process. So if that's what we're moving towards, I'm not in support of that, but I am in support of having commissioners get things onto the agenda and have real board packet information that support the agenda items that are on the agenda. So I hope that's clear. Is there any other discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
There is a comment.
Well, we
We have a comment. And I'm not sure, Sherry Ingalls, you had a comment. Can you come on up?
Good evening, I'm Sherry Ingalls. My husband and I, Bob, we own Half Moon Bay Sport Fishing. And first time many of you have seen us, we usually get up at 3 in the morning. And this is one of the few times we've been off the water for a couple days, so we were able to attend tonight. Based on the agenda, there was a few items that didn't really plan on commenting on, but definitely wanted to kind of hear what was going on with some of this stuff, at least firsthand. The reason I decided to put a public comment on this one is it's an item that I've thought about quite often, and it's related to placing items on the agenda, but it's more or less clarification of items that are put on the agenda. A couple of the items that were on tonight's agenda. One of them specifically caught my attention, bait shop lease process. Well, is that Oyster Point? Was it Pillar Point? If it's Pillar Point, well, I'm the only bait shop owner that I know of at this time. So a clarification that would explain a little bit more, is it regarding this harbor, is it regarding that harbor? Is it something we need to be concerned with, or something, well, if we want to go to it, we can lose our hour sleep, because I got to be at the shop with the doors open at 6 in the morning tomorrow. But that's tomorrow. At least I have enough sleep for now. So there have been some other items that have happened in the past. Like recently, there was the second of two since I've had the shop marathons. That was very extensive. This one went much better, matter of fact, to let a few of you know that were involved in it before than the one that had happened previously. There were still a couple little snafus, but we've been in contact with John Draper with the Harbor Commission, or the Harbor Department, and everything went fairly smoothly up with us. A couple little things with other people, but again, when that was put on the agenda, it was indicated as approval of athletic event for and a name. It didn't say what harbor, it didn't say what kind of athletic event, it didn't say anything about the possibility of such a large event. They ended up having 1,000 participants, plus all the people that were there to view the event, plus all the related stuff that went along with it. So it was not just a small little athletic event. I originally thought it was something at Oyster Point. So again, a clarification of items put on the agenda, I think, would be extremely helpful. So if you are considering making any kind of changes that would involve agenda items, maybe that would be something you would also want to include with it, maybe a little bit more clarification.
Yeah, if I may, I really want to own that. My heartfelt apologies for alerting you and sending you down here. You know, I noticed your bait shop at Pillar Point when I was there today. I didn't realize that there were two, and I really am sorry. Because I also believe very strongly that anyone, and I know our council does too, who helps me with the agendas, I believe very strongly that you should be able to read the agenda and tell what it's about. And so I have to own that lack of specificity. And I really am sorry. It was about Oyster Point. It should have had Oyster Point. And just as I mentioned with the comments that John Oleman made earlier, I'm beseeching staff to give me a hand to make sure that I do a better job with that, because while I own it,
It wasn't just that one. Like I said, there had been these other things, and there are a few here and there. So just an overall, something to kind of benefit everybody. A little more clarification on the agenda items, I think, would make it a lot clearer for all those involved.
on a humorous note, I'm still trying to, when I go to work in the morning, I'm still trying to remember which town I'm in.
No problem. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sherry. Really appreciate the input. It's very useful. Thank you.
You know, we had a list of items for the agenda, and I do like to comment, maybe we can make sure that Glenn gets to see that list so that he can incorporate that as well. For a while, we were including it with the board packet, showing all the pending items, so that would be valuable for you to see, Glenn.
I don't mind at all when I get that list to have that there. One thing I do want to say is that in terms of, first of all, on my own, I'm going to prioritize the work that administrative staff is doing unless 3, 4, or 5 directors direct otherwise.
Oh, it's on there?
That means that items that a majority of commissioners have expressed as a priority are going to get staff reports, and agendas are a major piece of work for us. Those staff reports are going to get higher priority if they are on subjects that a majority of the commission is interested in. I don't want to prevent Commissioner Mateusz from discussing the lease legally with his fellows, even though I don't have a report, and that's why there's a report in there that wastes paper. But I don't have to put the report in there if it's fine with you. If when the item comes up, I just say, given all our other workload, we didn't we didn't have time to write a report, wouldn't have had time to write an adequate report. We do the agenda a little bit before we do the packet, but not so much that we can't, if this is how we want to do it, pull items from the agenda if we don't have written report. But on the other hand, I didn't want to deny any commissioner the opportunity to just, in a legal setting, without being able to take any action, but in a legal setting, to discuss something, even if there isn't a staff report ready. So I wasn't sure what the direction there, and that's kind of what this is for. Again.
So I think, speaking for myself, it would help to have the communication so that if I knew that the staff wasn't going to have time, they were going to put something in the packet, but they weren't going to have time to produce the report. If I got a heads up that that was the case, or probably either way, I would want to submit some information for the packet or make a recommendation on what should be in the packet. So I think a simple email or communication with the commissioner to check in and make sure that they aren't expecting a document in there that could easily be popped in. I think that kind of communication would be super helpful. So that's a suggestion. And also wanted to point out that the backlog priorities are in the board packet, item 10, page 3 of 5, and that is the general manager's report. So you do have a copy of the backlog, and in fact, it's titled Backlog. And I know Debbie has worked hard on this list, and it does include some dates and things.
10. Okay, so, my mistake, I didn't know that backlog priorities necessarily meant agenda items.
It does. So now you know.
Does it? Okay.
They're all.
I'm going to change the name to agenda items.
That's fine. We all knew what it meant, but you.
It's not the same, or it is?
This is not the same.
So they're not the same. So
It's not.
that's not the list of agenda items that we have discussed.
Oh.
That's things that staff hasn't completed work on.
Okay, well, there was a time when there was the list, the backlog of agenda item list as well.
Yeah, now I'll await direction from the commission on that subject, certainly.
So does anyone want to make a motion?
I move that any commissioner can place an item on the agenda with a limit of 1 item per commissioner per meeting.
If I can get a clarification.
Let's get a second, maybe.
Can I get a second? I'll second.
If I can get a clarification too, that does not necessarily mean that staff will be ready to have a report, but you will be able to have your discussion and set up an action item for a subsequent meeting.
And I would also, before you vote, just would like to clarify, you do have a resolution.
Oh.
And I want to make sure that you are modifying that resolution. Your current policy says that if a commissioner wishes to place an item on a future agenda, he or she shall first suggest the item under Commissioner Statements and Requests portion of the Harbor District meeting and shall make a motion to that effect. If the motion is successful by a majority vote, the item will be placed on a future agenda. Are you deleting that and replacing it, or are you adding an additional method by which items can be placed on the agenda?
Well, we could have maybe a resolution, a new resolution reflecting this motion if it passes on the next agenda that the...
Oh, well, I was suggesting that would be fine too. I was suggesting to avoid your having to adopt a resolution at another meeting, that if you clarified your motion would have the effect of modifying this resolution.
I don't think we need a resolution.
Yeah, the easiest way possible if this motion passes.
So what would the language be, just for clarification?
Well, so my question is, I'd like to prepare a resolution that you would be adopting right now. And so whether, maybe I'm misunderstanding your motion.
No, we can do it that way.
So my question was whether your suggestion is in addition to your current procedures or instead of your current procedures?
Instead of our current procedures.
Okay, so for clarification, that would delete the paragraph I just read and say instead, the way it was before that paragraph was added, which is that the following person shall have authority to place matters on the agenda Number 1, all members of the Board of Harbor Commissioners. Number 2, the general manager of the district. And 3, legal counsel of the district. And your proposal will be to amend that to say that with regard to members of the Board of Harbor Commissioners, they're limited to 1 item per meeting per commissioner.
Correct.
And if I may,
That's very clear.
as it's
Thank you.
worded, there'll be some administrative procedures that I will take place, for example, X number of days before the meeting, because we want to make sure that, staff has plenty of time to plan agendas. And of course, you don't, at any time, if the commission doesn't like the administrative procedures I put in place, that should be an agenda item, and 3 or 4 or 5 of you should direct me differently.
If I might, the resolution adopts a policy that describes the process by which commissioners could place items on the agenda and how they communicate with the general manager and how the language gets placed on the agenda.
So it's restricted already?
It is already in the resolution that the board has
It's
adopted.
already embodied in the resolution.
I'd like, in
correct.
that case,
So-
since I haven't reviewed
Well,
that.
but wait a minute, we have a lot of discussion happening here, and we have a motion, and we have a second, and we're trying to finish this motion, so I think we need to,
I appreciate that, but I don't want a motion passed that's not clear to staff, because then you'll be unhappy with what we
Well,
produce.
so we're trying to get clarification from Stephen Miller about the wording of the, I'm sorry, I'm trying to help. Is this helpful?
I think we have the motion.
Okay, so is it clear? Are we good with this motion?
It's clear to me
Okay.
that what Commissioner David has suggested is adopting, modifying Resolution 1913 to delete the paragraph F that describes the current process by which board members place the matters on the agenda, and instead add a caveat that commissioners are allowed 1 item per commissioner per meeting, but that the remainder of your policy and the procedures remains intact. So it's a very small change, 1 deletion and 1 small revision.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, because I didn't have a chance, what I was just asked was a chance to review it and see, and I think that it's adequate to
Is
guide
the
me.
resolution, I'm not seeing the resolution, is it in the board packet?
Additional item number 5.
Additional
Oh.
item.
Okay. I need to take a moment to read it.
I wonder if I could make a point of order while. These items are taking a little longer than I thought. You may want to consider after this going into the closed session, or certainly to me, 6, 7, and 8 perhaps can be tabled. Apologies to Commissioner Matoush.
I would like to finish this because it's getting confusing thinking about that when we're still trying to finish this. So if we could talk about any changes to the agenda after we finish this item, that would be great. We could take a moment to do that.
I'll call the question, and if we...
I'm concerned that this says that the request for the item must be in writing, because I don't think we've ever actually done that. Is that something you want to have in there? Because we aren't normally doing that.
No, that wasn't part of my intention.
Okay, so we would change that so that the request for the item doesn't have to be put in writing. It could be made verbally during the meeting. Is that something that you're okay with amending? I'd like to make that amended suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably be helpful to even follow up with an email in writing so staff would have the appropriate agenda title for that item. So, but I won't I don't necessarily have to make this a condition or.
Okay, so we could change the condition so that it could be a verbal request for an item during a meeting? Do we need to, like, clarify the language?
Well, I just see the potential now that you're now really revisiting Commissioner David's suggestion that this be brought back so that you have before you a resolution that you know what you were adopting. Scribbling and scratching this out and adding a word here or there, I'm not confident that I would create a resolution that meets exactly what you're talking about.
I'd like to endorse that because I don't want it to be unclear enough that staff makes an error. So I'd like to, again, I think maybe it's wise to table this, and it's my item. I promise to bring it back as soon as feasible.
Well,
maybe bring it back with a proposed resolution reflecting what we've heard from this conversation today.
it would be nice to wrap this up and not have to bring this back. What are your thoughts? You want to just
I
stick
think
with
we
your...
just, if you could make that one more revision, that is, as I hear.
Okay, well, so make a motion. Tell me what to write.
Where does it say they have to be done in writing?
C.
C.
I think the problem is that that is an artifact of your old policy, and then someone adopted, you amended the policy to add paragraph F without considering the implications to paragraph C. Is my guess as to what the history was when this was done in 2013.
Because the two don't jive, is what you're pointing out.
Correct.
Okay. So couldn't we just get rid of C completely?
Or would
You
want to
can
get rid
do
of F?
what you would like to do.
I mean, that might make it easier.
Well, here's the problem. I think you could make them not exclusive. If I get agenda titles that aren't in writing, there is no guarantee that they will be correctly worded, and that's what I'm worried about. If I get a correctly worded item, or at least can begin to get correct wording, talk to council, we need to clarify it, get back to you, we have something to work with. But again, I don't want to be in the position of, guessing what commissioners intend and then hearing about how it was the wrong item. So that's what's good about having in writing. I think if you decided a meeting to put it, if a commissioner asks for an item at the meeting, it might make sense to require a follow-up in writing just to be sure that we get the agenda right.
Yeah, let's do it that way. We'll leave C in.
Okay. So can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner
Yeah, they're
Carvana?
going to leave the in writing.
Aye.
President
So if
Brennan?
they
Aye.
shoot at a meeting, I also get it.
All right. So you had comments on the agenda that you wanted to bring up?
I think what Mr. Lazo was pointing out is that our closed session involves some outside consultants who are present. And so you may need to balance asking them to wait versus asking the rest of the public to wait. And that's just wanted you to know that those folks are here waiting for you.
Our harbor master does need action on item 9, but and we could take that after closed session as well. And I don't know how Commissioner Mateusz feels about waiting longer on his discussions.
I'd say take care of John first. I think that's a lot easier. Take care of item 9.
Okay. Wait a minute here. We have 2 public speaker slips for... Oh, we have 1 for 5, and I want to make sure that I call that because we didn't get to it. So if I could have Catherine Slater-Carter. I apologize about calling you late.
I realize you voted on this.
I apologize.
But you may want to designate Commissioner David and another commissioner to work with your attorney, Mr. Miller, and your new interim general manager to make sure that the wording on this agenda item is exactly what you want. certainly I agree with Commissioner David. It is so important to be able to allow free access to the agenda for everyone. And trying to make law during a public meeting is tough. So maybe you want to look at refinements that can be made or corrections and bring it back. I think you're on the right track, but perhaps forming a committee that could just take suggestions from your council and your interim general manager, and then feed them back would be a very productive use, so you wouldn't have problems in the future. And I apologize for not getting that item in sooner. I should have. I apologize.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have people that drove a long way to get here, and they've waited through the meeting for their opportunity to address the item they came for. So I would like to finish the agenda, but I want to get input from the rest of the board on the agenda. Are we okay with moving forward here? Okay.
I think the staff recommendation needs to be considered.
So let's move up 9 because that's important. So I'm going to call item 9 right now, which is removal of 4 abandoned watercraft at Pillar Point Harbor, and this is an item for Scott Grindy.
You have my report. Basically, it's just to approve as we've done in the past for the whole.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Any questions?
I just have a quick question. Does the grant cover all of the costs of the 8,655?
So far.
Okay.
As long as we don't, we have an amount that comes every year. It's roughly $150,000 for both harbors. And then what happens is we draw against that, we submit our costs to them. And, we try to stay under it until the next year.
Okay. Thanks.
Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay. So next we have commercial activity permit for California Canoe Kayak rate and fee structure. And this is an item for Scott Grindy.
Well, actually, because of, as you can see in the staff report, while we did provide some information these times, we weren't really done with the report, but again, I didn't want to deny Commissioner Mateusz the opportunity to discuss it, even though we may not take any action, but to at least talk to his fellow commissioners about it. This can happen at another meeting as well if we want to move it to the closed session, but I didn't want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I want to make sure we're working on it. We've basically giving these people permission to operate already, so they're operating without a lease of any sort. The district's not getting any money, but I think that what's very important is 2 of your commissioners went to visit the Department of Boating and Waterways in Sacramento yesterday separately. And one of the things that came up that the harbor could be potentially receiving some money on is, do we know, or is anybody tracking, are the kayakers launching at all on that West Shore Trail or West Side Trail? Because if they are in any way, or if it could be suggested to California Canoe or somebody else, so that we know that some kayaks are being launched there, you will be eligible for restroom refitting or rebuilding fees from the district. And if we pay just a little attention to that up front, we won't issue a lease that leaves us without that opportunity. And I just wanted to bring that up. If we don't have a signed lease, we've got to somehow say classes, something. We've got to direct some effort off that trail, and you're going to have access to some funds for redoing that restroom.
Just a point of clarification, it's not a lease. They're on private property and traversing over our property.
I thought we were supposed to bring up some type of a contract, and we're going to be requesting some other follow-up things that we haven't to this point.
A version of like what you would have with your party boat type per head count type approach. And the thing is, that what you're just, I was trying to clarify this, it's not a lease because they're on private property, but traversing across ours.
Well, they're also using our water, they want some electricity, they want some other things as well.
And they're using the restroom,
Yes.
which is important. And that, I think you can clearly say that I mean, I wasn't in your meeting, so I don't know what you talked about, but if it's a question of whether or not there's kayak launching near the fish cleaning station where the restroom is, well, there definitely is kayak launching because we know that they're doing that right now because they're in there already going with their business. So, and there were launches happening there previously, but certainly not to this extent. So, you know, if there is an opportunity for grant money there, it would certainly be great to look into it. In my meeting with Division of Boating and Waterways, I got the impression, it was a very short meeting, I got the impression that we would be more eligible if we could get this loan paid off, and that the loan is kind of hampering us because of some terms that were included in the renegotiation of the loan back when it happened. They mentioned to me while I was there that there were issues with late payments and so on, and so we, as a district, kind of got put on this list of not their best customers, I guess. And so if we could get that loan paid off, we would find ourselves in a much better position with the Division of Boating and Waterways, and I think that would be possibly very beneficial for the district with regard to seeking grant funds. So I think that paying down or paying off that loan would be very advantageous for the district to kind of get a fresh start with Division of Boating and Waterways, because they do have grant funding available. And that could definitely help our facilities for kayakers.
Speaking of grant funding, I think it's important for our committee people on beach replenishment to understand that Department of Boating and Waterways also has a $1 million grant available that's...
Excuse me, Commissioner Ratush, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but I just would like to suggest that perhaps this is an item that might be agendized for a discussion. It's we've run a little far afield from the item that's on the agenda.
I thought we were still on Boating and Waterways, so I was trying to sneak it in.
You have a proposed action on your agenda, which is a request to table this item. And that's really what is before you right now.
So when does this have to come back? Because we have a deadline by which we committed to work with this group. What's the deadline for that?
We can do it on the next meeting.
90 days.
So
if you didn't hear that, the harbor master says 90 days. We had 90 days, so if it comes back June 16th, we're good. This is the lease for the activity permit. Okay.
And details to follow. It's not going to be a flat fee. We'll never pay for our water.
So we'll be on the
June 19th meeting.
Okay.
And if we could get like a heads up in advance of the meeting to kind of get a sense of the direction staff is considering taking this, because at our last meeting where we discussed California Canoe and Kayak, it was sort of out of left field and we didn't have a lot of background information to make an informed decision. So if we could get more information to understand what the appropriate fee structure or however that's going to be set up would be. I mean, just any sort of information would be useful so we could be prepared for the meeting. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm looking at the harbor master because he'll be writing the report.
Yeah.
And I know it's something you're working on.
I should have said yes.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything else on this? Okay, so I'm going to go to the next.
Well, as before, if you would like to, just in keeping with the rules, if you're moving to table this, you should actually move to table it. Otherwise, it just vanishes.
So moved.
So let's, a motion to move it to our next meeting in June.
June 19th. 17th? Okay. Second? We get a second?
Commissioner Davis.
Okay, roll call?
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I didn't hear a second.
I didn't hear the second either.
Oh, somebody, can I get a second?
Between Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Matoush.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I only heard Commissioner Matoush. You made the motion?
I said so moved, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
I'll second.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the next item is discussion of Catch Cafe property. That's item 7. And I don't see any speaker slips for that. Commissioner Matoush?
Because I was concerned, have we looked into if there's a provision to examine whether there's a lease violation for not opening the cafe as this type of business?
I have not done so yet.
And basically, we didn't let this contract out to be a storage facility on the main line of shops in the harbor. And right now, it's tremendous valuable storage taking up space, and the harbor's not getting any revenue other than basic rent.
Okay.
So it's not how we envisioned the operation when we gave these people a lease. So I just want to see what we're going to do about trying to encourage this business to either open or permit another business to open there.
Any other comments? I'd just like to say that I think that it's possible that part of the holdup might be related to the fact that the Catch restaurant lease is month to month, and there needs to be a new lease for that business. And without having a lease, I think that, you know, if I had to guess, the business owner's vision may be to connect these two spaces to make a larger space. And with going month to month, there's probably not a lot of incentive to do that because they don't know if they are, you know, in a stable situation. So I think that working on dealing with the month-to-month situation and a lease for the restaurant is sort of part of the whole thing here. It would make sense to address both around the same time. So that's my only input. Do we need to bring this back, or can we just move on? We need a motion to bring this back?
No, I mean, I mean, unless you lose patience with the amount of time involved, but staff has plans to begin a project to allow us to review, you know, be able to easily review and have the status on all of our leases. And because there's interest in this one particularly, at least until all the others pile up as being of interest particularly, I think we can give this one special attention, at least to the one question that was asked, if the commission is fine with that.
And the month-to-month with the other lease, I mean, it's the same business.
I'm not exactly sure what I would do on that. I mean, I could tell you if it was month-to-month, but if you want to begin negotiations with the lessee, then I think that's a larger project.
Well, my understanding is that they want to begin negotiations and have for several years.
Right. So again, you know, having negotiations, I think, is a different discussion. I mean, I think, you know, it has to fit into whatever else is on the plate.
Well, this is also an item that's not on the agenda. So we're talking about the Catch Cafe, and the other business has not been agendized.
I think I can respond easily to the Catch Cafe issue. I think I can read the contract and see what it says.
All right.
And I'll.
That's good enough for me
Commissioner,
for now.
please, if you don't hear from me, send me an email and remind me that I promise.
Then we don't need a motion to table this or throw it away. We can just move on to the next item.
Okay, so next we have an item regarding, it's item 8, which is discussion of topic to be included in Coastal Commission presentation to the district. This was something that I talked about at the last meeting, but I didn't actually request it as an agenda item at that time. And given all the other things we're doing, I'm not sure that, although I think it would be great to have the member of Coastal Commission staff come in and give a presentation to the board or be available for questions or whatever. I think it would be very good for the district. I don't think we need to discuss this at this time, so I'd be comfortable with moving this forward to a future agenda at a time at which the staff can fit it in. Do I need to make a motion for that, or can we just plan on doing that?
No, I think we'll add it to the agenda backlog list.
Thank you. Okay. So, great, we're moving quick. So now we have various reports. This might be a good opportunity to move on to closed session if that's what the staff is interested in doing. I'm looking to see. I do have a speaker slip regarding closed session, prior to closed session, and that's for Jim Steele.
Thank you. I would just request that you, unless there's a compelling urgent reason, that you get through the public's business before you move to closed session, just in the interest of some of us that want to hear discussion on the public items, since we won't be able to hear the closed session.
Okay, so there's more you want to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does the board feel about that? Do we want to, the staff wants us to go to closed session, the public?
Just to be clear, I wasn't asking. I just was informing you that the folks that have arrived for the purpose of the closed session are here, just so that you knew that.
Well, I think our interim general manager did ask for us to go to closed session. So
I did.
Okay.
We did hear that.
Just because, if possible, just because the meter is running.
Okay, so I'm imagining that Mr. Steele might be interested in hearing item 11, which is the finance report. So maybe we could go right to that. And that will be presented by someone covering for Ms. Galarza. Item 11.
You have the report in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, I did want to pass on my thanks to the report, to Ms. Galarza for the reports that she prepared for the Division of Boating and Waterways meeting. She put together a list of leases and some relevant information that was useful, and it was information that I had not seen before, and I just wanted to pass on my thanks for providing that info, and that would definitely be something that the Finance Committee would look at, so it will be very useful, and just wanted to say thanks for all the work she put into producing those reports.
I will pass that on.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. So with that, are we good with going into closed session, or do we want to finish this agenda?
Let's finish the agenda.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So next, we'll backtrack. We will go to 10, which is the interim general manager's report.
My style is to put lots of things in the report, or as much, as you can say, I've been here that long, but to put items in the report just to put daylight on them, what I'm doing. I don't really need to comment on it unless there are questions.
Any questions?
I have a quick question for Scott's part of the acting general manager report. I'm interested in the brief report, if you can summarize it in 5 sentences on the meeting with the Coastal Commission and GHD consultant.
Thank you.
But if it's a brief summary, I can
It'll be
ask.
very brief. It was
Okay.
a good meeting. It was the meeting of GHD, myself, and the Coastal Commission, And the outcome is we're waiting on the director's response because they just had a coastal commission meeting like in the south, like in the LA area. So when that person came back, I expect to hear something back in writing saying positive things from what they're telling me. They're very supportive of what we're trying to accomplish with the trail.
So there's no holdup right now?
I'll tell you when we see the letter, but
Okay.
as far as I can tell, it appears not.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so next we're going to go to item 12, which is the interim human resource manager's report.
And you have my report. I will take any questions. The only item that I'd like to pass on, and this was in response to General Counsel's request, was to make sure that the commissioners had taken their mandated training. And so I had put together, I did some research, and all the commissioners have completed their 80-1-2-3-4 ethics training. The next item on the list is the 80-18-25, the anti-harassment and anti-bullying training. And I have, there's an upcoming webcast training class on June 10th from 10 to 12. It's a good value option. And so what I'd like to do is have the deputy clerk of the board pass out the enrollment package and the link, so if you want to sign up for it. And then if you do use your own credit card, just submit the class completion and we'll reimburse you for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
So can I pass these out? Oh, you did? Great, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Any questions? Nope, hearing none. Next, we have operations, Oyster Point Marina, and Pillar Point Harbor. Scott Grindy.
Is that my report?
So, you have the pictures here, so what's the plan for the faucet?
You probably all visited a public restroom from time to time where they have the knob or a push button. I can't remember which one staff are changing it to, but presently the faucets at the fish cleaning station, you can turn and they stay on. And so what that does is everything from dog washing to whatever goes on. And it's very important to have that for fish cleaning station, but it isn't really designed for dog washing and everything else. Yet I appreciate it being a dog owner. At the same time, having something that immediately shuts off so we're not wasting water. So staff are changing and may have already changed the valves on that so that there's a quick turn off. Either you push it and it goes off 10 seconds later or 30 seconds later, depending on the timing of it. Just to make it so we can conserve water as much as possible.
Great, okay. Any questions? Okay, so next we have committee reports. Any committee reports? Okay, hearing none. Moving to commissioner statements and requests. Item 1, which is, so 1B, which is the Board of Harbor Commissioners may make public statements limited to 5 minutes. Would anyone like to make a statement? Okay.
Now I'm going to talk about the Department of Boating and Waterways with a potential $1 million grant for the beach replenishment. The application is on their website and it's due February 2nd. So as that committee looks at options, there's a potential for financing there if we can get some of the other information to fall into place with Corps of Engineers and different things. So I think that's fine with me.
Okay. Next, we have B2. Any commissioners wishing to place an item on a future agenda may make a motion to place such an item on a future agenda.
Are you?
Okay.
So we actually did have a very successful beach replenishment committee meeting last night. We don't have a committee report of that yet, but we discussed possible shoreline protection plans for Surfers Beach with some key players that came to the meeting, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Coastal Commission. We had representatives from the Monterey Bay and Gulf of Farallon sanctuaries, and representatives from San Mateo County, and many interested residents. We had over 20 people. I think we got some great input, some great feedback to move forward. And so the committee would like to discuss a recommendation with the board, ensure that the Harbor District could potentially, through this beach replenishment committee, be the lead agency in this replenishment effort and connecting with relevant stakeholders and coordinating planning efforts. So I believe I don't have to make a motion anymore. Is that new resolution? I mean, either way, whatever you want me to do, I can make a motion, or I can follow up with an email in writing.
Let's see. I'm not entirely clear I understood the action you took earlier, but it did sound like you already approved a new policy by which you don't need to seek the approval of your colleagues in order to place this item on an agenda.
Okay, then I'm just announcing it, and I'll follow up with an email, and the item will be completely prepared by the Beach Replenishment Committee.
Okay, great.
Well, thank
Any
you.
other?
What was that?
Any other requests? Yes.
I do. This is not an agenda item. I would like to request a special board meeting at the earliest availability.
Okay. A special meeting. Is that something we can do during this item? Just because it's never been done before, or is that something you
Sure.
can just do via email?
Majority of the board can almost at
Do I
any
have to-
time it likes call for a special meeting at a time and place.
I'm sorry, do I have to do it via email, or could I just say it from the dais?
You can right now make a motion, you call for a special meeting at
I'd like
such
to
and such
request
time
a
and
special
place.
board meeting, please, at the earliest availability of the board. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Roll call?
At the
and then-
earliest availability, we have to work
So
with
you'll
staff.
have to, the majority, what will have to happen, this is a little unusual, a majority of the board needs to set the time, the place, and the agenda. So
Do we have to do that right now, or is that?
you can, if the majority communicates its desires to Debbie, she can agendize it accordingly, I think.
Okay. But do we have to do it right this second, or could that happen offline after the vote, or how does that work?
If the majority now votes to have a meeting at the earliest convenience, I don't think that is a substitute for the majority informing Debbie that the majority has agreed on the time and the place and the agenda. So you would need to communicate with Debbie.
So in other words, you still need to, you still need to communicate with each other and get a majority to agree on the time, place, and agenda, but what you're doing is saying, we'll have one.
Earliest available.
Or you could communicate offline amongst yourselves. This is just so the public knows, as I've learned, this is an exceptional case that the commission can communicate with itself for the purposes of calling a special meeting without it being at a meeting. It's unique.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. We have called special meetings before as a board offline. We've never done it in a meeting before that I recall, but it's not a big deal.
I mean, I'd be happy to do it offline. I just want to do it the right way, so please help me.
So the confusion I'm having is that calling a special meeting at the earliest possible opportunity is not specific enough under the Brown Act. A majority of the board needs to agree on the time, the location, and the agenda. That majority can decide those three things at any time it wants. You could do it right now, or you could offline, three of you could go out for drinks and decide that you want to do that. You could do it by email, but those three items need to be agreed upon by the majority.
And just to clarify, it's not a violation of the Brown Act to discuss setting agenda. You just can't talk about the content of the items and what you'd be discussing at the meeting, but it's fine for a majority of board members to discuss agenda setting. Is that accurate?
A majority of the board may meet without violating the Brown Act's normal prohibition against the majority meeting. If the sole purpose of the meeting is to call a special meeting and determine the time, the location, and the items to be considered at the meeting.
Okay.
In other words, the preparation of the agenda.
Or you
What's
can
on
do
the
it,
agenda?
just to clarify, because I think there's still some confusion, you can also do it, you don't have to meet, you can do it via email.
Under the Brown Act, that's meeting.
Okay, thank you. So does that help? So you can just email.
I'm sorry, I'm more confused.
Commissioner Bernardo, you would like to call a special meeting, is what I'm gathering.
Yes, I would.
You can do two ways.
Okay.
Right now, you could get a majority vote to call a special meeting at a fixed time, at a fixed location, and set the agenda. If you're not prepared to seek a majority vote on those items right now, you can do it offline, by phone, by email, by meeting in person, any way you like.
Okay,
But
thank
what
you.
what is not productive is to go and only 1/3 of the way there, because calling it without saying the time, the location, and the contents of the agenda doesn't solve the problem.
Okay, let's see, after Memorial Day, Tuesday, what day is that? This Tuesday, at the end of the day, at 5:30.
Tuesdays are not a good day for me. Is there a different weekday that we could do it? Because I would like to come.
Okay, well, it sounds like then we might have to do this via email, because we could be doing this all night, trying to find dates tonight. So that's not working. So I think maybe we will do this via email then, because it's not working. We could go on all night doing this.
Okay, so you're going to send an email?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other items that anyone would like to place on a future agenda? Nope. Okay. So next we have item 15, and we just got a speaker slip for 15. I'll read 15. It's conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, California Government Code Section 54956.9 D2 and D4, 2 cases. And the speaker is John Ullum.
Real fast. She wouldn't tell me that. I pumped her information, she won't say that. My understanding, or my guess is, that one of these things is going to be about litigation that I'm hoping you're going to initiate against the people who stole $40,000 to $50,000 with equipment from the district, and so in hardware and in software. As you know, we've documented this, we've taken pictures showing the stuff doesn't exist, and so I kind of guess that might be happening tonight. You know, there's some things here, it seems like about the appropriate amount of time to do what would be a basic investigation. We'll look to see if it's there, it's not there, you know, what's the problem. So I did file a PRA request today, asking that that investigation be released and supplied to me. I'm hoping that if this is the case, and this is what's going on tonight, that you will vote that way and direct staff to supply me that information tomorrow morning. As you know, there were 5 or 6 of us that did a lot of work to find that information for you, that your district was being seriously abused by somebody. So we'd like to see that. Please consider doing right here. Thanks.
Thank you. And so with that, we are going to adjourn to closed session. Do we need to make a motion to do that, or can we just do it? Okay.
If you would like to, for the interest of the public that may be waiting till afterwards, it's my expectation that the closed session will go past your 9:30 cutoff time, and it might not be a bad idea to vote to extend the meeting time if you are so inclined to do so.
Would anyone like to make a motion to extend the meeting time?
So moved.
Second.
To what time, though?
Can we get this done in half an hour past 9:30?
Do they have to come out of closed session to extend it further?
No, you can extend it in, well,
I'll just say
I don't know the
10:30.
answer to that. Say, that would be great.
10:30, okay. And we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Thank you all for coming.
Closed session.
Do I need to stick, or are you reporting out to me?
We will report out.
Or should I stay? You want to
It's up to Glenn whether he wants to stay or not, but.
So let's take a 5-minute break.